Good afternoon, everyone. I am Saurabh Mishra from NASCOM SME team. We will wait for a couple of more minutes before we kicking this session. So please stay tuned and we'll be starting very soon. Okay. Yeah. Welcome again. And on behalf of NASCOM and DSCI, I'm pleased to welcome you all to this fifth edition of SME Pivot Series talk. SME Pivot Series program is a program which is designed to help the small and medium enterprises to pivot new initiatives in their organizations. In this program, we invite the practitioners, industry experts who speak and share their views on a particular and given topic. Today's topic is on cyber security and cyber defense within the small and medium enterprises, and which is we believe is a very pertinent and very apt topic given the given the context or given the situation that we are in. So without wasting any much time, I would like to invite our first speaker of this session, Mr. Atul Kumar. Atul is the lead a lead in DSCI. DSCI is the assistant concern or company set up by NASCOM, which is dedicatedly working in the field of cyber security and data protection. Atul leads the government initiatives there, and he has been a part of in this cyber security ecosystem for so long, over a decade, rather I would say. So he has been a forefront in impacting in this area by helping the startups in cybersecurity space and helping them to grow and to go global. So I would like to request Atul to take the discussion and to take the session forward. Over to you, Atul.
Thank you. Thanks, Saurav. Hope I'm audible properly.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thanks for the nice introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here and discussing with you on the cybersecurity aspect, particularly in the domain of SMBs. So I'll start with a quick intro of what all we are going to do in next one and a half hours of time frame. So what will start? We'll start with a quick overview of changing paradigm of digitization in SMBs, and taking that thing ahead. Sorry, I have my colleague Aditya. Aditya will be talking about the best practices and the overall threat landscape that has emerged, and we'll also be talking about what happened in last two and a half years of time frame during this COVID pandemic and what all has changed. Taking it further, you must have heard about the recent directions that was released by CERTIN, which is part of METI. So that the certain directions is around the reporting of incidents, and SMBs are also falling under the gamut of that directions, though we have certain extension till 25th of September. So we'll give a quick overview of that direction. Taking it further, one aspect of this whole the cybersecurity imperatives are to understand what all we need to do, right? The other part is how to do it. And for that, we need experts and the capability in the domain. So we have two of the experts. We have Mr. Dharshan Shanthamurthy from SISA. He's the founder and CEO. And we have Mr. Chetan Anand from Synchronize. He is the founder and CEO of Synchronize Technologies. They are the experts individually as well as the running organizations which are day in, day out serving various clients in India and abroad as well, and a lot of clients from the SMB side, and solving the challenges emerging from the cybersecurity point of view. So we'll have these two experts talking about their views and the capabilities which are solving the challenges of cybersecurity in SMBs. Later on, towards the end, to give you some sense like how to assess yourself when you have implemented certain technologies, tools and all, you have assessed yourself what all you need, but just to give a sense how you can assess, we have worked on that area, and we have created a freely available tool which you can leverage to assess yourself and understand what all you should be doing to protect yourself and strengthen the cybersecurity posture of your organization. So this is something what we are going to do in next 1.5 hours of time frame. Now, starting with this backdrop, I'll start with the first portion, setting up the context and giving you an overview of the digital transformation or changing paradigm of digitization in SMBs. See, before we start, I would like to again reiterate that fact that Indian SMBs and especially the IT/ITES SMBs are integral and very strategic part of the global supply chain, not just digital supply chain, but otherwise as well. And the credibility that we have built in last couple of years, solving various challenges from the digital point of view across the globe, we have gained that kind of credibility, right? And every time we need to make sure that that credibility is intact. And today, because of the digital transformations and all, there are definitely certain challenges, and more than challenges are, I'll call it, there are areas where we need to sort of strengthen the cybersecurity and data protection perspective, so that there won't be any challenge in future, right? Here, definitely, we need to talk about what happened in 2.5 years of time frame with this the COVID pandemic. So, overall, COVID pandemic has driven home the reality of the digitization, which is a big differentiator and became a big differentiator across and again for the SMBs. Say, initially in 2020, say, digitized to survive kind of scenario has emerged, right? Everything was happening virtually. The people who are not working, say, using that work from home kind of scenario, even they have to do that work from home kind of scenario built in the organization. From both the perspective, from the perspective of internal coordination, there were definitely a lot of changes happened. And again, from the external point of view, while you are serving your clients again across the globe, there were definitely a lot of new areas that have emerged, whether it's typical collaboration tools, adoption of collaboration tool, whether it's making sure that you are engaging and onboarding clients very effectively and efficiently and smoothly. So for that, some certain digitization happened, whether it's ensuring that you are scalable even in that online world. So adoption of cloud that has again happened. And while you are serving your clients, again, especially for IT/ITES kind of SMBs, while you are serving your clients, you have adopted a lot of SaaS-based or cloud-based, cloud-native solutions to serve those things. With all such adoption, this is something that happened in, say, 2.5 years of time frame. Along with that, overall digital shift that was happening while you are adopting different technologies like AI, ML, or IoT, or say robotics and those kind of things for different verticals. These things are opening up various, I would say, frontier for the organizations where we need to focus on, and that demand was coming in so that you can protect the overall infrastructure. At the same time, while you are dealing with the clients, you need to protect their data as well. We are dealing with the critical information, financial information, healthcare information, and so on and so forth. We need to take care of that information as well. So broadly speaking, everything which was happening and which has happened in just in last 2 years of time frame, that has opened up a kind of a Pandora box where we need to see what all we need to do. So one aspect is definitely technology side, right? When we are using, say, analytics tool, when we are using, say, IoT kind of things for improvement of sorry, improvement of, say, I would say productivity, or effectively driving, monitoring and controlling the processes, or reducing the cost, particularly from the IoT side or RPA side, maybe you can call it robotics, or from artificial intelligence side, while you are analyzing data, sentiments of your clients, or you are building some sort of chat bot kind of things to helping clients, or for better engagement with the clients and getting some sort of competitive intelligence. You are leveraging those kind of technologies, right? I'm not covering all of these things, but these things are happening and we are continuously adopting it, and which is opening up a new frontiers for us to look at, address those challenges which are emerging in those areas. These challenges are emerging from two parts. Now, technology part, where we need to look at how to solve it. Second, the regulatory part, where you need to look at what kind of compliances are there, what kind of liabilities are there, because I know many of you would be working in European Union, you would be working in US market and so on and so forth, where stringent regulatory compliance requirements are there. Now in India, we are discussing about data protection bill or other such kind of things where we need to take care of the data. From that perspective, we need to be very clear about what all are there which are opening new scope of sort of challenges or the areas to focus upon. Now, with all these technology adoptions and all, sorry, couple of things that emerged. Many of you would agree that the easiest thing, the email, right? The challenges on email related things like phishing, wishing kind of attacks, that has emerged significantly, right? Apart from that, various areas like, say, ransomware attacks, that those kind of things have emerged significantly, right? What all we should do then? We should take care of, say, data. We should take care of our perimeter. We should take care of our end devices, and so on and so forth. So typically we can call it like we need to deploy certain encryption tools. We need to take care of the information. We need to have some sort of firewalls, bare minimum. But what all those things are there which we need to take care of? Because it can be a long list, and what all we would be doing. That is totally depending on what kind of infrastructure I have, right? On top of it, which is common for everyone, is the awareness part. Awareness from both the sides. Again, what my organization and my people need to know while they are dealing with sensitive information, critical infrastructure, and so on and so forth. At the same time, the awareness of the regulatory and compliance related changes happening in the ecosystem. If we take care of all of these things, we'll be in position to understand what all we need to do, and so we need to then we'll move next level where we'll adopt those technologies. So with this backdrop, what I'll do, I'll request my colleague Aditya to talk more about the changing threat landscape, talk more on the best practices and what all you should be doing. And from that, we'll have our experts, Dharshan and Chetan, talking about how they are solving those challenges. And towards the end, with all this backdrop, we'll try to give you a sense how you can assess yourself, and how you can understand what all you should be doing, so that you can reach out to us or directly to these companies and providers having the Indian capabilities to sort of help you out addressing those challenges. With this, I would request my colleague Aditya to take it over and share his thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Atul. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are perfectly audible.
Right. So, hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aditya. So I will be picking up exactly where Atul left. So he talked about, how, SMEs have been playing an exceedingly important role in the overall global supply chains, how their businesses have been expanding, how they're operating in multiple geographies. And in the course, he talked about how digital technologies, how emerging technologies are being leveraged by SMEs to achieve these various different objectives, right? So my short brief talk would be divided into three parts. First, I'll talk about some of the larger trends from security standpoint that we have observed with regard to SMEs. Then some of the challenges which SMEs grapple with, why they are not able to address cybersecurity adequately or effectively is something that we want to talk about. And finally, end up with the people, process, technology, the world-renowned framework, and try to put some of the recommendations which Atul also talked about. I'll just probably expand them a bit. So this is what the global SME outlook, looks like, right? The scale, the presence, and of course the operations in multiple geographies, and leveraging technology in order to be more agile, in order to be more productive and effective, is what we are trying to depict via this particular slide, right? So now, why those cybersecurity considerations? So as Atul talked about, majority of the SMEs are, processing critical information, and thereby cybersecurity becomes an important concern. And when I say critical, very simply put, it has one implication that the organizations would be facing serious regulatory or legal repercussions, and owners of the personal information, that gets compromised in the event of a data breach. Those owners could encounter significant consequences. So that is why we are calling that information critical in the first place. Whether it's misappropriation of funds, or whether human life getting affected, or inability to work, disruption of the operations. So all these aspects make the information critical. I'm not saying all the information is critical, but definitely a lot of SMEs are processing critical information. Therefore, cybersecurity does become their problem if it is not at this point of time. Second is, we have observed that SMEs, some of the SMEs have been proactive, and some have been proactive in adopting and implementing cybersecurity controls, right? But still, we believe that a lot of SMEs have only adopted basic security controls, which may not suffice, right? They might have the antivirus protection, they might have the backups, and they might be also performing systematic software updates, right? But at the same time, fewer SMEs perform the awareness training, which Atul was talking about, for the staff, and fewer SMEs utilize logging and alerting systems, which are very, very critical if you were to stay on top of your cybersecurity posture. Also, SMEs, especially in today's era where we are working from literally anywhere, and we are accessing or requesting access to the corporate resources at any point of time from any place, and also cloud being leveraged for various information services, and remote access tools being leveraged. So this is yet another important trend that you need to keep in mind while you are assessing, while you're evaluating your current cybersecurity priorities, right? And if now I were to strictly talk about what kind of attacks SMEs have been grappling with primarily, so phishing would be at the top. And I'm operating under the assumption that you are well versed with what phishing is. If somebody is not, so phishing is kind of a social engineering attack. Probably social engineering attack is a larger bucket where phishing kind of falls at the top, wherein you end up downloading an attachment, you end up clicking on a link which you were not supposed to, and that kind of becomes an entry point for the attacker, right? So phishing, malware, and web-based attacks, what we've observed are the most common causes of security incidents experienced by the SMEs, right? So if I were to talk about the repercussions for SMEs, they go way beyond the monetary damages. Of course, the monetary damages arising from a data breach, if you look at the financial cost associated with the data breach, that would be huge. But it goes way beyond that. What it does to the reputation, as we mentioned, that SMEs today are part of the global supply chains. And let's say if one SME gets impacted by virtue of a cyber attack, it would have a ripple effect. It would have a cascading effect on the overall supply chain, right? So the damage that it could cause to the reputation, so that could be significant. And trust me when I say this, that when the attackers are not just attacking with the motivation of earning money, they are attacking with several other motivations, disrupting the services. They want the operations to be discontinued. So that is another motivation. And they're also somehow what we have observed as DSCI is that there is a shift in the motivation patterns of the attackers as well, right? Business disruption I've already talked about. and what Atul was talking about. Of course, the law of the land, the regulators, the policymakers have certain expectations from all the organizations operating in the geography. So, if you do not have a proactive function where you're actively tracking the regulations, where you're actively tracking the guidelines and the directions coming in from various different quarters, so then you might end up, being non-compliant to this, and thereby end up, incurring all those penalties and losses associated with this. So these are some of the important cybersecurity considerations that you need to be aware of. And more than being aware of, you need to actually understand the nuances of it. That is the larger message that we're trying to drive, right? So what I feel as part of the global trends, and this is equally applicable to India as well, what is really needed is a transition from initial awareness, just a superficial awareness, to internal cybersecurity culture. For example, workers should be knowing and should be understanding how phishing and other social engineering attacks work, right? So that's why if you look at the best practices, if you look at recommendations, and what we also in our day-to-day interaction with the industry and also our colleagues from the industry, so we propose that, organizations should be actively pursuing mock drills. They should be having those simulation exercises in order to make their employees understand how these various different types of attacks work. What are the rules of using their own devices to access companies' ICT environment and other basic cybersecurity precautionary measures, right? So these are very, very important aspects when you consider understanding the cybersecurity ramifications, right? So some of the statistics that we have put together on this is, more than 70% of the attacks are targeting small businesses. And when I say attacks, apart from the phishing, malware, and web-based attacks that I talked about, so several different kinds of frauds, right? So there is something known as a CEO fraud, right? So a technology company that specializes. So I'm just taking kind of a subtle use case. So there was a technology company that specialized in website development. So that became the victim of a CEO fraud, right? Resulting from a member of staff, acting upon a fraudulent email. What I was talking about phishing earlier, they thought came from their CEO. So the company moved all the staff to remote working, but as their email server was still on their premises with, broadband connectivity being, compromised. So staff were using their own personal email accounts to communicate with each other, right? And a member of the finance team received what they thought was an email from the CEO asking for urgent payment. So just trying to paint a picture of what kind of different frauds, apart from those sophisticated ransomware attacks, which Atul talked about, are also taking place when it comes to the small and medium enterprises. And if you look at the ransomware attacks, the sophistication of the ransomware attacks, now it's not that they're just going to, encrypt your files. They're also going to exfiltrate your data, and they are going to use that as an additional leverage in order to ask for enhanced ransom payments. So this is the kind of sophistication that is happening across the globe, and with regard to SME sector, I'm afraid this is a little more pronounced, right? And almost 50% of the small businesses have experienced cyber attack. I'm not saying that this is exclusive to small and medium enterprises. It's true across the industry verticals. But all I'm saying is that SMEs sometimes may not be that proactive towards implementing the cybersecurity related controls, whether it's the technical control, process controls, or other forms of controls, right? So this is kind of, coming from a survey that was conducted for the Asia Pacific region. So indicating the number of cyber, breaches, cybersecurity breaches in the past 3 years. And unfortunately, India comes out at the top in this particular thing when it comes to the small and medium enterprises. So yes, so if I were to talk about some of the key challenges, some of the key challenges when it comes to the SMEs, right? So evolving technology is that we have talked about budgetary constraints. This is a harsh reality that we are trying to balance our budgets for various different functions, but unfortunately, we may not be earmarking sufficient budgets for cybersecurity, right? So that is something that fundamentally needs to change. If you look at another challenge with regard to SMEs, so the third-party risks. So you must be catering to or engaging a lot of vendors, a lot of service providers, a lot of third parties, fourth parties, and nth parties as they call. So what is the cybersecurity readiness of your vendors, of your contractors? So and what are the kind of cybersecurity risks that are emanating from your third parties? So that's very, very important for you to understand and also to take action on. Another challenge for SMEs, what I believe is, the availability and suitability of the guidelines, the best practices in the form of standards, white papers, or others. There are multiple documents existing. However, most of them either they're providing, generic information such as, implementing backup or address a larger organization with an existing cybersecurity framework. In addition, some of the well-known standards, like the ISO 27001, describe an approach for the design, right? For the design, the implementation, the operation, control, and improvement of an information security management system, right? So I think this is very, very important challenge that you need to understand and comprehend. Another important challenge is, lack of ICT cybersecurity expertise and personnel, which I feel is a significant challenge, because cybersecurity is a specialized topic requiring specialized knowledge, right? So it's quite common that within an SME that individuals tend to multitask, wearing multiple hats and multiple roles being assigned to them. As a result, an employee within a SME may be responsible for cybersecurity as well as for multiple other processes, right? So while there are several cybersecurity related standards, as I already mentioned, that SMEs could implement, the implementation of these standards can be a time-consuming process, right? And compounding the challenge in this area is that many cybersecurity solutions require specialized IT knowledge to implement and manage them properly. So all these issues combined, make managing cybersecurity within an SME a big challenge, right? So this is another important challenge that I wanted to bring about. And one more important challenge that I wanted to talk about was the shadow IT, or the personal devices, BYOD, or usage of open source solutions. So due to the budgetary restrictions, large number of SMEs end up relying upon open source solutions, right? Which, as we open source solution might have known security vulnerabilities, and they are using these open source solutions for performing business critical operations. And a lot of employees, having their own personal devices being connected to the corporate network. So these kind of scenarios also significantly add to the overall risk for the SMEs, right? So in the interest of time, I will quickly move on to the recommendations part of it, right? So as I mentioned at the beginning, the recommendations from a people process technology standpoint is, so you need to probably prepare a checklist, and against that checklist you need to make sure that you tick all the boxes. I'm not saying that the overall cybersecurity posture enhancement exercise should just be limited to that, but it can definitely be a good start for you. Do you have a director or an equivalent who is responsible for cybersecurity, right? Do staff members with specific security responsibilities receive proper and regular training to support their role? Do you have a documented security policy with associated operating procedures signed off and fully supported by senior management? That's very, very important. A third party risk I already talked about. So does senior management authorize third party access to confidential or commercially sensitive information? From a people standpoint, I talked about, I'll quickly touch upon a few questions from a process standpoint that you need to ask yourself. Because when you are able to answer these questions, automatically your best practices or, best practices or standard operating procedures, so to speak, would emerge from that. From an audit standpoint, are critical systems such as firewalls and routers regularly tested for vulnerabilities, right? Are all the default passwords on all the systems reset from the default vendor installed passwords? Right? Is there a mechanism that you have put in place to ensure that the critical security patches are deployed to systems in a timely and audited fashion? Right. So this was from a process standpoint, but from a technology standpoint, just a few points, and I would spend a couple of minutes on this, and then I'll hand it over to Atul to talk about this from a regulatory standpoint. Are external connections such as to the internet authorized by the senior management? So do all the devices which are storing data have full disk encryption enforced, right? Are the log files of important security devices actively monitored to detect potential security breaches? So there is a long list that you need to kind of draw for yourself, because at the end of the day, it comes down to your business context, to your business environment, and the recommendations that accordingly cannot be a one size fits all. But certainly there can be a common minimum standard, or reasonable security practices, as the term also which is used in our IT legislation, that talks about having those bare minimum safe practices. Right. So I would like to stop here in the interest of time, and go back to Atul, if he can quickly walk us through what the regulatory expectations are as of today.
Sure. Thanks, Aditya. So what I'll do, considering the time in hand, I'll talk about the recent CERT direction covering complete regulatory ecosystem thing. Would be a time-consuming thing. We can probably do it next time. But recent one which came from CERT, this is the direction which was released by CERT on 28th of April, and it is primarily aligned with incident reporting. So there are 6 directions actually. The last one is mostly focusing on virtual asset provider and all. So I'm assuming that community is not here, so I'll skip that part. Broadly, this direction is applicable on all the body corporate, including the service providers, whosoever is doing business from India or for Indian clients, and any kind of incident ranging from the target scanning to compromise of critical information infrastructure or critical systems, or any kind of identity theft, DDoS, DOS kind of attack, data breach, data leak, any such kind of incident. Organizations are supposed to report, and it's a mandatory thing. And within 6 hours of time frame, it was supposed to be reported. What happened actually on 28th of April, when this direction came, after that, a lot of discussions happened, and and industry was seeking a lot of clarifications. Mid of May, CERT has again released one set of FAQs, which is frequently asked questions, and try to solve certain questions which we have asked. We means industry has asked. Starting with the first direction which came from CERT side is synchronization of the ICT system clocks. So for all the ICT system clocks, CERT was asking it should be in sync with what NIC or NPL. NPL here is National Physical Laboratory. They have their NTP server, and all the system clocks should be in sync with the NTP server of NIC or NPL. In the clarifications FAQ, they have clarified that it can be synced with any other NTP server, but at the end of the day, it should be traceable to NIC or NPL. That means anything which is UTC, which is Coordinated Universal Time, if that NTP is in sync with that, so you just need to make sure that it is not deviating from NIC or NPL NTP server, and you can synchronize with that. This requirement is applicable for all the ICT systems. The second requirement was mandatory reporting of any incident within 6 hours of time frame. That is also applicable on the service provider. If you are serving any client, even if you have seen any security incident there, you have to report that. This is applicable on security service providers as well as the user companies. That means the user of those technologies, as well as if you are providing any sort of services there. Whosoever will notice first, they have to report it. The 6 hours of time frame was not that big actually, so we have again requested CERT, and CERT has clarified there's a bucket that CERT has provided that includes anything which can which is severe in nature, like DOS, DDoS, ransomware kind of attack, or anything which is impacting human life, human being actually, and data leak, data breach kind of incident. So they have given a broad bucket of 4 kind of incidences which you have to report within 6 hours of time frame. And that reporting needs just reporting, not like providing the complete details. Whatever you have at that point in time, that you can do. Second is, which is connected with this second point, is you have to provide one point of contact with a CERT, which is an individual who can coordinate with CERT. And second is, you need to provide you need to provide the logs to CERT around those incidents. So CERT will ask if some incident is getting investigated and CERT wants to have access to that logs, you have to provide that access to the log. Here, the thing is, if you are reporting, but you don't have access to the log legally and you are not the custodian of that log, probably the owner of that log would provide, but as an observer of that incident, it becomes your responsibility to report it. Now, another thing which came from this direction is retaining those logs for 180 days. In the direction, they have clarified or explicitly mentioned it should be Indian jurisdiction, but in the FAQ, they have clarified it can be outside India as well. If you are having your servers outside India, you can keep the logs outside India, but whenever CERT would ask, you have to provide within a reasonable time frame. So these are the these are the 4 directions that came. The 5th one is primarily for the data center provider, VPS, VPN kind of providers. I'm not sure if that side of companies are participating here, but quickly I'll cover that. So for that, certain information that organization has to retain for 5 years. That means validated names of the subscriber for the customers who are hiring those services, the period for hiring the services, purpose of hiring, validated address and the contact details, and the ownership pattern of the subscriber. So these are the information that you have to provide. You have to retain for 5 years of time frame. At the same time, the email address and the IP from which that registration happened, even that you have to retain for 5 years. IP allocated and being used by the members, which is the 3rd point here in the 5th direction. That is actually log, and when we were discussing with CERT, it is not in black and white in the order itself, but this is something which is a kind of a log. So more than 5 years, it should be retained for 6 months time frame. That probably CERT we have raised that it shouldn't be retained for 5 years because it's going to be a bulk of data. So these are the 5 elements. There are a lot of nitty-gritties involved in this, but that's going to take time. So probably for that, we can feel free to reach out to us. We can help you out understand more in that front. But one broader element that I'll tell you is sometimes organizations think that those incidents are not relevant for the whole ecosystem, or at a country level, it's not going to have any implications. But just to clarify, say, I'll take example of say ransomware attack. Any such kind of attack which can have a larger ramification, that will have a national importance, right? And CERT would be interested in that. So what we understood while talking to CERT and with our engagement and understanding, it's like anything which has a larger ramification and can become a widespread thing would fall under the kitty of this direction, even under the 4 broader bucket that has to be reported within 6 hours of time frame. So that is there. They have in the clarifications FAQ, they have given the definitions of incidents, type of incidents, and various other elements, the chain of custody, how they are going to handle the data, and so on and so forth. That probably you can look at, and in case required, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help you out understand it in more detail. So that is something that we wanted to cover broadly from the CERT directions point of view. Now over to Aditya. Aditya, yeah.
Right. So thank you, Atul. So for the moment, we will take a pause and we will invite our colleague from the industry. So let me take this opportunity to invite Dharshan from SISA InfoSec. Dharshan, are you around? Yes. If you can unmute yourself, we can see you, and over to you. I'll stop sharing my screen. So yes, over to you, Dharshan. Thank you.
Yes, just give me a second when I pull up my screen.
Sure.
Right. Great. So first of all, thanks NASSCOM and Atul and Aditya for taking us through the initial set of slides and setting the context for this. So appreciate all of your time on this Friday afternoon as well. So let me quickly give my thoughts. One of the key things, I mean, quickly about myself. I'm the founder and CEO of SISA. We are a a forensics-driven cybersecurity company. And what that means is largely we use learnings from forensics. That means that many of the things that we do is investigations. The bulk of the investigations that we do, we take those learnings and then try to ingest those learnings into whatever we do with this preventive, detective, or corrective security. So our philosophy is largely to similar to the airline industry. If for every miss or a near miss that we have, take those learnings and then make sure that it does not get repeated in the rest of the the ecosystem. And we have kind of privileged that way is because we are one of the approved core forensic investigators for, especially in the payment industry. And we get a lot of insights, not just in India, but on a global scale on what's actually happening in the, so I saw some questions around, there is no major incident, but that's not things that are happening, and we get to be the first-hand responders for that. And one thing that we can tell you is that there are lots of incidents when a lot of those incidents have a lot of learnings. And our philosophy, and in the next 10-15 minutes that we have, is to see if I can share some of those learnings with the audience out here, which can help even security posture by 5%. Then I think all our time, at least my time, is well served in this forum. So with that, I would just straight get to the chase, which is as a leading forensic investigator across not just in India but in many markets, one of the key things that we have observed, these are the trends we publish on a semi-annual basis, something called the top 5 learnings. And what we do is we go to accumulate all the investigations that we have done over the last year or so, and try to see what trends we are seeing and why organizations are getting compromised, and what is the why we hear a lot of news around an X or a Y organization getting compromised, but what are the real why they're really getting compromised, and what's the real problem which is leading to these compromises. And one of the key things that we have kind of accumulated, and of course that goes something similar to what Aditya presented, is 43% of our investigations which we did, especially in the financial services industry, is related to phishing or spear phishing, where you actually target a particular organization or a particular role inside an organization who has privileged access, and then compromise that and use this for compromising the rest of the organization. I'll speak about how these, just give you a flavor of how the intruders actually penetrate into a network, and how do they actually exfiltrate the data. So in a moment, I'll probably walk you through a small sample exercise, sample case study. And 30% of the organizations got compromised because of a third-party connected network. And especially since we're talking about SMEs here, one of the key things that even large organizations, when you're dealing with partners, would want to, you would see that coming through, and you will see a lot of requests happening as to what third party, what our partners are doing to secure their network, because using third parties, major organizations are getting compromised, and we saw this in bulk of the organizations, even the large retail chain in the US, who got compromised to a supply chain attack. And then, of course, one of the key things that we are seeing in the phishing is largely leading to malware embedded attachments, which is making the which is how the ingress is happening, which is how the end system, the end user system is being compromised. Because one of the key misconceptions that we have is the intruders straightaway attack. At least from an outsider standpoint, we would say that they would attack where the data is, where the real sensitive data is. But in reality, what they really do is compromise the end user systems, or systems which are most vulnerable or are exposed. And from there, they actually do lateral movement till they get to the crown jewels and then exfiltrate data. And the other statistics, is 40% of the cases, admins obviously have made it very easy for intruders to really have a freeway inside their environment. And this, of course, is not just for SMEs, but largely across the organization. So I would encourage you to, if you have time, please go and download the report and see this for more. But moving forward, I mean, one of the key questions that we keep getting as forensic investigators is what is our, how do these breaches really happen? And how do intruders actually get into a network? And obviously we are, and as an investigator, we would not go into the specifics of each investigation. But on an overall, if you look at, a sample network, which is, I'm sure, which will resonate with each one of the people that are in this room, the virtual room, is you've got a public network, you've got an internal network, you've got your support systems, kind of kept it as simple as it can get. But typically what happens is the breach or the intruder largely comes through your public systems or your public infrastructure. And bulk of the internet, we had one investigation which we did was where they actually compromised a HR management system. And once they had a compromise of the HR management system, then they actually did lateral movement to their Active Directory systems. And from their Active Directory, then went on to their core systems, which actually contain critical data before they exfiltrated real sensitive information. So this kind of gives you a picture of how an intruder actually, compromises. And if you want to, just to give you a specific, if I should just double click on that, and how does it technically happen for those of you who are technical in this room, I will not go too much in detail, but hopefully this slide is available for people to read it up post this session. So the web server typically got compromised because of a malicious file being uploaded on a production server which is on the public internet. And the intruder uploaded multiple shells, and then after that he used certain malicious software to get a domain, to get a dump of these credentials. And from there, once he had compromised the end user systems, did lateral movement, obviously, taking their own time. And some of the things that we call it in forensic world is the dwell time. That is the time that the intruder was in the environment till the time he actually exfiltrated data. And as per our top 5 learnings report is about 18 months. So in 18 months, they were actually studying and then waiting for the right time before they actually exfiltrate data. So what we are seeing in the forensic world is that the intruder waits for the right time before he actually exfiltrates data, which leaves even the investigators to also take a lot of time to kind of trace back to how this the breach essentially happened and even hold them accountable, right? So I'll not go into too much of the technical details, but if people are interested, you can always feel free to write or download our report and then read that through. But you will get a sense of how real world breaches are actually happening and how intruders are able to do lateral movement and then exfiltrate data. But for this audience, just to summarize, what are the common challenges which organizations are facing and which SMEs such as this NASSCOM and part of NASSCOM and organizations should be aware of is, of course, that the sensitive information, right? So one is where we are really seeing is people do not know where the sensitive information is. Largely having an inventory and control, because you got now, for example, we've got sensitive data such as healthcare data or financial information, which is actually being stored not just in production systems, but say test systems, development systems, moving around in the corporate network, and because of the nature of the digital data, it gets replicated and used in multiple areas inside the environment. So really getting hold of where this data is becoming a big challenge for organizations, as with work from home, with lots of cloud systems coming into picture and technology really being disruptive. We are seeing organizations losing control over where the data is in their environment today. The second is excessive reliance, and this is largely for smaller and medium organizations, is dependence on internal IT to do up a cybersecurity. And I think Aditya or Atul spoke about it, because of the constraint of resources, you have IT to develop a security, and skills is a big challenge there. And then of course the security maturity and posture within the businesses requires a constant iteration and ideation, and it's a journey and it's not a destination. And then of course general security awareness continues to be the #1 problem. So coming back to our objective, or rather my objective of of this time with all of you is, if I was able to make a 5% contribution of improving the security posture of each of your organization, I think the time is well spent. So if I were to just say that one thing that you can actually take back is from this slide is our learnings of what you can do. And I saw one question coming in the group as well, is there a checklist for best security practice? And there are lots of checklists, right from NIST to ISO to, I'm sure Atul mentioned that SMEs, DSCI has its own checklist. I'm sure that those are going to really, really help. But if there are any things that you can do in, in the next 30 days or the next 60 days for you to get, improve your security posture, what are those 5 things that if you were to ask me, then these are the things that I would want you to focus on, and kind of measure yourself from scale of 1 to 10 if possible, and see and put up a roadmap for the next 30 days of how you can improve this. First is vulnerabilities. Today we are seeing ingress happen because of just sheer lack of patching and lack of fixing of known vulnerabilities. And bulk of the intruders are actually able to penetrate and get into a network, get into a system, end system, because of the fact that the system is there is a known vulnerability for that system, but organization has not taken enough to do whatever it takes to protect themselves against that. So first step that I would want you to look at from our learnings is to see and check within your organization, are there any known vulnerabilities? There are multiple scanners available. And obviously, if you know where your data is, then it helps you if you can run a data discovery and classification to identify where data is there in your system. That's the first step. The second is, of course, the endpoints has to get monitored, and we have spoken about this. Detection and response. The traditional AV tools are not able to do it. So now, endpoint detection response, a credible EDR solution to protect the endpoint is the need of the hour. And then intelligent monitoring. Gone are the days when, for example, to connect to Atul's point of responding within 6 hours, for those 4 buckets that he mentioned, you definitely need an intelligent monitoring system for detection and leave alone response, because response within 6 hours is only going to happen if you detect it on time, and you're able to identify that. And today detection is the most important component. And how do you detect in such a environment which is fast changing? So that's one of the reasons why you need to have a strategy of how you're going to do intelligent monitoring or having a managed detection response solution. And the fourth thing is, of course, access management, because having access to just managing. I'm not sure how many of you have multi-factor authentication deployed in your organization, but that's a solution that you should definitely consider. We've seen organizations, even if they're privileged, even if the application supports for multi-factor authentication, it's not enabled, or it is enabled in a ineffective manner, which can get bypassed, has been one common vector, attack vector that we have been seeing. And of course, having a proper incident response, and I'm glad that the CERT is pushing in that way, because one of the key things that we've seen is containment is becoming a problem. Once an organization identifies an incident, containment is taking a long time, and that's when just as if you were to draw the parallel to healthcare, when you actually have an emergency, you need to actually make sure that the first aid is actually given fast enough. But here, what we are seeing in these forensic investigations is that organizations are not able to contain the compromise, and then many of the times the damage is going to be more when we are not able to contain and respond. So having a strategy around these 5 things, in my humble opinion, should improve your security posture at least by 5%, and make sure if not more, and that you are ready for any of these compromises. And just to conclude, I think we are nearing my time here, but one of the key things that we can help you from a SISA standpoint is, one is from the, we use forensic driven cybersecurity approach to help identify, prevent, detect, and respond. And of course, we've got a whole sort of solutions here. I would not go into the bulk of it, but from a compliance testing or cyber resilience or data protection or training, we would be happy to partner with you at any point in time or assist you in case you need any of that. So with that, I would hand it back to Atul. Thank you so much. Hopefully this top 5 learnings could help you improve your security posture, and feel free to download a copy of this report. It was released by the National Security Coordinator, Dr. Rajesh Pant, a couple of months ago. Please feel free to download that report and shoot any questions if you've got. Back to you, Aditya, Atul.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dharshan. May I now invite Mr. Chetan Anand from SECONIZE to share his thoughts. Hi, Chetan.
Yeah. Hi. Sound check. All
yes,
okay?
Working fine. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for that very insightful session, Atul and Aditya. A lot of thought over there. And Dharshan walked us through some of the solutions that can be adopted as well. So what I'll be doing in the next 15 minutes or so, again, giving my view and my thoughts about how we can improve cybersecurity for the SMEs. I'm Chetan Anand, the CEO and co-founder at SECONIZE. We are a startup based out of Bangalore. We were incorporated, or we were incubated by NASSCOM itself, NASSCOM 10,000 Startups. We're part of the Startup India initiative, also the DSCI Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity. And last year, there was an initiative by the government of India to identify some of the product companies out of India, because the overall digital services that is adding to the GDP of India is going to be $1 trillion. They wanted to see how we can protect all of them. So as part of that, SECONIZE came up with this idea of auto remediation, and we were the finalists in that grand challenge. And happy to also say that we were the most innovative cybersecurity product of the year last year for 2021 by both NASSCOM and DSCI. So again, I will just walk you through. It's a Friday evening. I just want you to identify, what is common that you see, what is a common pattern that you see across all that is listed out here. These are all different SMEs, different sectors that is there. I think Atul, Aditya gave a lot of hints into this. You can start sharing in the Q&A session, or I will just, for want of time, move on to what this actually means. We were talking about EdTech here, food delivery, logistics, healthcare, and so on. So what we see common across all of these things, and if you see that they're all today technology companies, they all are digital companies. In a way, the COVID, if you see, accelerated the whole process of digitization. So in the last 2-3 years, whether you like it or not, you are a digital company. And while this is good, while you can reach customers and you can have different channels to service your customers, along with that comes a lot of risk for the organization as well. Anything that is connected can be exploited. And a lot of information was given of how important it is, what cyber means. And if you see, cyber risk is one of the top 3 risks for any organization doing business in any part of the world. Why so? Like I said, one of the aspects is that the digital assets, the percentage of digital assets in an organization is increasing, which means that cyber risk for the organization increases. And there were some of the statistics shared. So either it is 2 out of, depending on which report that you read, it is still a large number. It is 2 in 3 or 3 in 4, 66% or 74% of the organizations today are compromised in the SME space, which is a large number. And if you see, the effectiveness of these organizations is not much. And the bigger worrisome factor is that a lot of these organizations are not prepared. And after the incident, they need to start shop, and which is not only affects the organization, it affects the economy as a whole as well. And even if you start looking at, hiring some of the resources out here, it is very difficult. They are very scarce in the cybersecurity world. The good silver lining out here is that if you look at all the incidents, Dharshan spoke about all the forensics and so on. But if you look at all the attacks that have happened, all the breaches that have happened, if you go to the root cause, then a lot of it is the weaknesses were already known. 99% plus of all the incidents have happened, the vulnerabilities were known earlier. Just that the organizations did not pay enough heed to see that it could have been avoided. So what's happening overall is that while you're embracing and growing your business, you're just not knowing what are the risks it brings to your organization. Again, when you talk about cybersecurity, a lot of jargons that we've spoken on in the last hour or so. Just want to demystify some of it and make it simple, a primer, a 101 for you in cybersecurity. So essentially what happens is when you have a digital asset in an organization, there is some weaknesses which are inherent as part of what you have, the assets that you have. These weaknesses can be the known vulnerabilities or CVEs, as it is called, an operating system which has got some vulnerabilities which can be exploited, or it can be just the way that you are configuring things in your system, right? If you have a cloud, they talked about passwords, what is the strength of your password? Nothing to do with the software, but it depends upon how you configure your password itself. And those could be exploited. Threats are what are some of the things that can exploit these weaknesses. And again, there was a lot of mention about ransomware, phishing, some of the top three, right? The ransomware, the phishing, the malware systems that exist. And the persons, the people who do it are the actors. And given the geopolitical situation today, and you also saw that India is like topping the charts now in terms of compromises. So there are nation state actors who are playing a predominant role out here. And with all these things, you're always at risk. What is the risk here? There can be a negative consequence. There can be an adverse impact for your organization. And what does this lead to? You can lose financial losses being spoken about. You can lose data. You can lose customers' data. There's a reputation loss for your organization, this penalty. And also you can lose your IP of the organization. So all these are the risks that you face as an organization. And there are controls that exist where you can mitigate some of these threats, knowing what your organization is. As we talk about security posture, what is security posture? Again, to know how prepared are you with the known threats that is outside and the environment that you have and the weaknesses that you have. So can you bring in some controls to mitigate some of these? And mentioned out here is some firewalls and having some good policies and so on. Hopefully that clarifies some of the aspects of what cybersecurity is. And when we talk about the SME space itself, right? I would say SMEs are the sitting ducks for the attackers, one of the highest attack segment. And it's all automated now. It's like an industry by itself, probably a bigger industry which is attacking all of these, and they're all automated. So they don't differentiate between large enterprises, small organizations, and so on. They just pray and try to see where they can compromise something. And the consequences are very disastrous. We spoke about some of them, but the problem is that if you're an SME, the large ones, they can somehow recover, they can absorb the impact. But if you're small, then after the impact, 60% of them shut shop as well. And there's a very popular saying, which is again true, that you may not know that you're impacted, but you're already compromised. Like they say that there's two kinds of companies. One, they know that they're impacted. Other one, they're impacted, but they just don't know about it. And whether you like it or not, depending upon the industry that you're in, if you're in a financial services, if you're a fintech organization, you're required by law to adopt the best practices and also be compliant to some of these standards. Like SEBI has its standard. If you're in the insurance space, then IRDI has come up with own set of specifications and controls that you need to adhere. Overall, depending on whom you're serving, you can be serving B2C kind of industry or consumers directly, which means that you have their data. You may be in the B2B space, which means you're integrating and supplying services to some of the other enterprises, which means you are part of the chain and you may be the weak link in the organization. So as we get a lot of SMEs just approaching us and saying that we are talking to some organization and suddenly they're given this big checklist of the security things that we need to comply, all the standards that we need to comply and so on. So you may be good in what you're doing, but if you don't have good security posture, you will not get the business. So from a business sense, again, it is good to have a good posture, and you can demonstrate this to your customers and also increase their confidence to adopt your services. Again, we hear this often from SMEs when they're talking to us. Already mentioned, the first thing that we hear is, nobody's going to attack us, right? They're going after the large companies. And mostly what you see in the news and media is that, some big enterprise is compromised and then they are in the news for all the bad reasons, right? But there are a lot of things which don't come out in the open, but we see that a lot of the SMEs are compromised as well. The other thing that we hear from organizations is that this thing of you may be thinking aloud as well over here that I am using, AWS, Azure, GCP, so I'm totally secure. While the service providers are responsible for one aspect of it, it's a shared responsibility, wherein most of the compromises today is also happening through the cloud. So that's another vector where the compromise is happening. So you need to be very careful and look at all your posture across the cloud as well. Now, the question comes, yeah, all this is good, but where do I start? It is confusing, it is complex sometimes. Suddenly you get asked by your enterprise customer to say that, produce me the list of all these things. Are you 27001 compliant? Show me your security posture and all these things. And you start wondering, what do you have to do? And invariably, you are using some of the digital assets in your business. And most of you, if not all of you here, are born in the cloud. You are using some of the services, you want to jumpstart quickly, use the services and get started, which means that cloud is one of the big assets that you're using, all the services that come in the cloud. Then you have applications that you're serving your customers, your websites, your web applications, your mobile applications, your REST endpoints, and so on, which they're using, right? Now, again, you're either serving your customers, your consumers are using it, or you're serving your B2B customers out here. So that becomes another vector for you, the application itself. And these applications run on some environment, on some runtime, which is virtual machines, be it Windows, Linux, or you may have containers and so on. So these are the different surfaces where the attack can come in. So you need to start worrying about your cloud, your application, and infra. This is your typical stack that you have today. Now, again, where do you start and how do you start planning? There was a little bit mentioned about this. If you look at the framework, the NIST framework for cybersecurity, it talks about IPDRR. You'll hear this more often, which is to different phases of the framework for cybersecurity. It is to identify, to see where you are, what you are, do you have any issues, to protect yourself by bringing in controls and so on. And then you have detect. In spite of doing all these things, you may still get compromised. So you have to go and look, where are you compromised or not? It's the detection part of it. And then if you are compromised, then you need to respond to that. And then if you're affected, how do you recover from your losses and so on. So this is a whole framework. You need to have all these technologies built. While having said that, like typically in your software development lifecycle, if you catch the bug early on during development phase, it is much better than your customers catching the bug, which is going to be very expensive for you. So in the same way, in cybersecurity, if you can identify the issues very early and often and address and mitigate them at a very early stage, it's going to be much less expensive for your organization and much better for you. So you have to start with, like I said, all the assets that you have in the cloud, in the infrastructure, in the applications. Again, there's different aspects of security. There's people, process, and technology. What I'm talking to you is here and now, kind of where you have to start. You look at all your digital infrastructure and look at what your security posture is, what weaknesses that you have, and then what you need to bring in and what you need to mitigate. Again, you may have a lot of issues out there. If you do an assessment, you need to start looking at, out of these many issues, where do I start looking at? So it depends upon the risk that these face post your organization, and look at the ones which is most riskiest for the organization and then start addressing them. And again, there's not a one-time activity. You cannot get away with saying, I have done it last year, so I'm good, I have a report. The threat landscape is changing, ever changing. So you need to look at, what is your posture at any given point of time. Even you may be doing good, your SLS posture may be good, but there may be new threats outside which is acting on your organization. So you need to do a continuous assessment and stay on top of it. Once having done that, you know that you're good, then you can start going to the next phase, which is certifying yourself to a standard like a 27001, which is broad-based, which is an ISMS, which will talk about all the aspects of it, people, process, and technology. Aditya spoke about some of them. Does your management in alignment? Do you have policies in place? And are you implementing those policies? Do you have awareness training to your employees? And so on. So all that comes as part of your standard, which brings a very good cyber hygiene for the organization. Having done all these things, you need to also start looking at how effective it is and how can I improve upon what I have, how all of these work together, your identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, and all of these work together. Software organizations, you also have a capability maturity model for cybersecurity as well. So you can assess against it and look at, where do you stand, what's your benchmark, and where do you want to be, and how do you get there over a period. So that is the whole, different ways in which you can start using cybersecurity for your own benefit. Quick view of, where, like I said, there can be a lot of issues that can be identified, but the most important one is to look at what does it mean for me? What does it mean for my organization? What are the kind of attacks that is happening? And because of which do I pose a risk? Can I start addressing them first? So just don't manage the issues, but manage the risks associated with those. And if you can look at your organization as a whole, not in silos like your cloud and your infrastructure and your applications and so on, but if you can get one unified view and look at, this is my overall risk, and this is my top risk to the organization, and this is where I need to be addressing this. So you all have limited time, but in that limited amount of time, if you can start focusing on the riskiest propositions for the organization, therein you are de-risking yourself to the maximum extent out here. Quick view of Synchronize itself out here. Synchronize does the cyber risk assessment. So we are working with SMEs where we identify their digital infrastructure across the cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP. Then you start about infrastructure and the applications, understand what it is, come out with, what issues that is being found, and with that also come out with prioritization of what you need to address and help you to prioritize what needs to be addressed, understand the issues. And importantly, it's also, even if you do all these things, even if you know what's the top issue, it takes time to fix these issues. Till such time you're still susceptible, you're still open. So if you also we support auto remediation, where you can start fixing those issues, reducing your mean time to remediate as well, so that you can de-risk yourself to the maximum extent at a faster time. We are supporting different use cases, like I mentioned. There are companies, even if you start off with raising investments as part of due diligence, people would want to know your security posture, because the valuation of the company is also depending upon your security posture today. Even if you go for an M&A, then they're asking for a security posture assessment. If you're talking to enterprises and offering your services, maybe inside India to large enterprises, or if you're starting to talk to companies outside of India, Europe, and US, they'll definitely ask about your security posture. So we support your organizations in trying to understand the security posture and improving it, so that your overall you get a good cyber hygiene as well. A case in point, we are supporting an organization from a Series A perspective for more than a year. They had large presence in the cloud with several thousands users using their applications. So we help them understand what their overall security posture is, how they can improve it. And after that, like I mentioned earlier, as a plan, they also got certifications in 27001 in privacy and so on. And they started doing their maturity assessment to see where they are and how can they continuously improve. They are close to be a unicorn now as well. So security is very important. They're taking security very seriously, which I advise all the SMEs out here as well, to take security seriously and start early on itself. Don't wait. DSCI is there. You can reach out to DSCI for any of your security needs. You can reach out to us as well. Both Dharshan and me, or any of the startups in this space out here. There's a whole DSCI has got its own cybersecurity product catalog. There are a lot of companies that is waiting to serve you, waiting to serve your security needs as well. So quickly want to leave here that start off your assessment, understand what your security posture is, reach out to the experts. Don't think that you are very secure and nobody's going to attack you. Reach out to the experts, let them help you understand where you are. And as we say, right, protect to grow. So don't wait for things, protect yourself from early on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chetan, for the enlightening presentation. Let me now invite Atul to briefly talk about, the self-assessment that we were talking about. And I could see in the list of questions, people are actually asking about, is there a checklist for the SMEs that can help them be compliant with the cybersecurity best practices, etc. So I think this self-assessment framework would show you the way. Could be at least, I know there are several frameworks and several guidelines out there. This could be one of those. Let me share the screen and then over to Atul.
Sure, Aditya. Yeah. Can you? Yeah. Okay. So again, I'll quickly talk about this framework. Sometimes back we have developed, and the background is when we understood all the SMBs, because say SMB is a very large gamut that we are talking about, right? And there are certain SMBs where we don't have that kind of resources available, right? So to help them out, to sort of handhold them, at least to understand what all they should be doing. That is first part. And the second part is all the SMBs from the digitization point of view are not at the same level, right? Some SMBs, based on their business need and based on the resources available, they are at a very early stage of digitization. Some at a mid level, I would say, and there's certain SMBs, they are sort of at a very advanced level, leveraging cloud and all the digital technologies and so on and so forth. So based on these three different heads, right, we tried creating a kind of assessment tool, which is something which will help you out understand what all you should be doing. But again, there was a challenge. If we start asking about the digital technologies and if we start asking about the questions, what kind of security you need, what kind of challenges you are facing, again, we are asking security questions. Every time these SMBs are not having those kind of resources available at their hand, who can answer those kind of questions? Many times a business person is answering those questions, which may not necessarily be having expertise in cybersecurity and even I would say all the digital technologies, right? So from that perspective, while we were conceptualizing this framework, we took it from the business perspective first. So as I said, there are three levels: base, progressive, and advanced. And these three levels are sort of decided based on certain business related questions. Aditya, if you go to the next slide, yeah. So here, if you see, to tell you at which bucket you are in, which bucket you are falling in, your business is falling in. So we have questions around your organization profile. We have questions around business model, IT enablement that is happening in your organizations, partner ecosystem that you have, and regulatory focus that you have. Sorry, regulatory focus that your industry vertical has actually. Around these 5 areas, these are all business-centric questions. So you don't need to be expert of, say, IT. You just need to know about your business actually, and which is a, I would say everybody knows that. So now, from that perspective, I'll give you a couple of examples. Like when we are asking about the organization profile, what kind of questions we are asking? We are asking questions like which sector you are working in, right? What kind of revenue you are generating, right? In which particular under the supply chain, with what kind of work you are doing? Are you into electricity, gas, power, or water related, transport related things? What kind of things you are doing, right? Then what is your say geography spread? Are you just working in a single geography, or you are say working in multiple geography in the country, or even you are outside India? Those kind of things, right? Then around the business models, if I tell you, so around business models, we have questions like what kind of business model you are following, whether it's B2C, B2B, or both kind of business model, because these things will help you understand what kind of digitization footprint you can have actually. It's like analysis of that part. Now, other things are like, are you dealing with personal information, health information, or financial information, or sometimes SPI, which is sensitive personal information? Are you dealing with those? If you're dealing with those, what is it something that you are storing, right? Are you using some sort of digital channel to deliver your services or goods? So those kind of questions we are asking in terms of business model, right? Now, in terms of digital enablement, what kind of tools, technologies you are using? Are you using some ERP solutions, or human resource management solutions, or CRM solutions? Are you using some certain of those solutions, right? Are you using some communication platform? Email, most of the people are using email. Apart from that, are you using certain other platforms, right? Are you allowing, say, or your employees to use your email on, say, mobile phones? So those kind of questions. Here, these questions are actually helping us, and at the back end, that engine is assessing what kind of digital footprint you can have, and what kind of security posture you should have to protect that digital footprint. Similarly, under this digital paradigm, we'll ask questions like your cloud adoption, because cloud adoption is something which is actually happening in SMBs. What kind of cloud adoption you are doing? Are you, say, what kind of deployment model you are using, whether it's public or private? What kind of, what type of cloud you're using? Say it's IaaS, SaaS, PaaS, what kind of things you're doing, right? So such a kind of questions we are asking to start with. Again, giving example of, say, your, I would say, partner ecosystem. So this partner ecosystem you can consider as a third party kind of thing, right? If you are engaging with third party, you need to take care of that part as well. What kind of information you are sharing with them? Say if you are collecting some information from your client and now sharing it with a third party, now you are responsible for that information. And then you need to take care of what your third party is doing with that data. How are you sharing with that data, right? And so on and so forth. Again, regulatory focuses, again, depending on the domain, what kind of geography you are working. So it will help us understand what kind of liability you are sitting at. So Adit, if you move to the next level, yeah. So based on all this assessment, based on these questions, we'll assess what all would be applicable on you. It is all suggestive kind of thing. Say, for example, in policy management, there are certain areas that you have to take care of. Say data protection, because you are dealing with the data. If you have tech marks, you need to take care of, say, data privacy, backup, those kind of things. Similarly, access management, security controls, and awareness, and so on and so forth. There are so many domains that are there, which you have to take care of. Adit, if you can move to the next one. Okay, now this is something which is the base level. Out of this, the whole bucket of controls, based on your response, we'll assess, or not we actually, that backend engine is assessing it. And based on that assessment, that engine will suggest you that, okay, these are the areas which you should look at, right? Say, for example, if you are at a base level, where your digitization level is not that high, you need to take care of information security governance at a high level. Physical and environmental security, you need to take care of some kind of antivirus protection, access management. You need to take care of the backup and those kind of things. It will suggest you. If you go to the next one, which is the next level of digitization from your side. So apart from those controls, there are certain more controls that would be applicable on. So for example, if you are leveraging multiple communication platform, you need to look at email security. If your digitization level is high, you need to look at, I would say, logging and monitoring kind of solutions, right? Sorry. Now, cloud security, if you have adopted the cloud. If you move to the next level, again, based on the response and the posture that you have from the IT on digital point of view, it will add to that thing, whether if you are dealing with, say, personal and sensitive data, the data protection is something that you need to take care of. If your business is totally depending on that digital native solutions, then you have to have a BCP DR plan for that, right? If you have, say, for example, if you have third parties involved, then you need to have, say, subcontractor management provision in place. These are the things, when you take care of all of these things, probably your posture will be strengthened. And what we talk about, like, there's no silver bullet, right? But at least you'll be prepared for all the things which probably can happen in that infrastructure if you don't do those kind of things. So this framework is broadly, again, assessing your business model, again, assessing your sort of digitization level. It will suggest you what all you should be doing. Now, the thing is, everything we cannot do by our own, right? Here we need to have certain support. For that, you can reach out to us. There are so many, even Indian players available in the ecosystem. There are so many providers are there. You can reach out to them, and probably they are the people who are expert in the domain. They are day in, day out solving those challenges, right? They'll help you out. But at the end, definitely I'll say we are there in case you want to implement something, you want to have any clarity. We'll be happy to assist you in terms of understanding that domain, right? And then probably helping you out understanding who all can solve it. Now, this is a freely available platform, and we are not capturing any information when you are filling there. So sometimes people feel like if you submit those information, we'll capture it. So it's not happening. What information we are capturing is just this form while you enter. After that, what you are selecting, what kind of inputs are coming, it's not something that is being captured. You can download those sheets, and you can, means your internal IT team and security teams can refer back to those sheets, what all they should do. Feel free to reach out to us, and we'll help you out strengthening your posture. The last thing that I will say again, many times SMBs feel they are so, and especially the very small or micro level companies, they feel like we don't have any larger ramification if something happens. But with all the increased digitization level, that paradigm has totally changed. Now, small incident can have a massive impact on the business model of the organization, as well as can have a larger impact and ramification at a industry level. So from that perspective, I would say use this assessment model. At least it will help you understand the paradigm. It will help you understand the domain. Feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to reach out to any industry member and try to strengthen your posture. That's what, as an intent we have behind conducting this workshop. And we'll keep doing it with the help of NASSCOM, Saurav and team. We'll keep doing it. And wherever required, we'll contribute to this cause. So in case we have any questions, we can answer that.
Yes, Atul, there are a few questions on the Q&A window. We can, please look into that.
Okay, sure. So I have first question as cybersecurity is complex and government policies. Around government policy, there is one question. So broadly speaking, there are one point is government policies, like we have National Information Security Policy Guidelines, NISPGs that we call it, that was released by MHA. It is primarily for the government agencies. Government is leveraging that. It is a very comprehensive policy actually. And that is one that government is leveraging. Apart from that, whenever you are working with particular sector, it comes that the guidelines come from that sector itself. So if you are working with banking sector, RBI will have a number of guidelines depending on the domain in which you are working in, right? Similarly, if you are working in healthcare, there are other set of guidelines. So yes, there are multiple guidelines, but that is totally depending on the sector you are working in and for which organization you are dealing with. Sometimes organization will have their own security policies, and that is based on their criticality. If you are dealing with, say, defense, you're dealing with, say, critical information infrastructure, they may have their own policies in place to make sure their infrastructure is protected. So, but those things we need to take care of because at the end of the day, those things are definitely going to help strengthening the posture. A specific question, if you have any in terms of policy, I'll be more than happy to answer that. Second question I have in terms of this NTP server thing. So according to the direction, all the ICT elements should be in sync. Wherever you have a system clock requirement, it should be in sync with the NTP. And technically, if I see, based on my knowledge, say generally organizations prefer to have a single NTP server for all the ICT, right? Otherwise, it would be difficult for them to internally manage it. Second, if there is any incident happening, so if you have multiple time servers, so it would be very difficult to synchronize and do that this forensics and the investigation, what happened, where happened, right? Third thing, this to clarify, actually, this is time synchronization. It is not time zone. So it is the base. I would say it is about UTC, not about the time zone of that geography where you are working in. So time zone you can choose as per your preference and your the business need, but the base time should be UTC. That's the requirement actually. I think this explained best. Browser JS Guard could prevent phishing. So I think Chetan or Darshan, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, and there's no one silver bullet for any of this, right? So you cannot just prevent anything by using one thing. It may help in certain scenarios, but phishing and everything, you need awareness. You need to let your employees in the organization know the perils of phishing. It is very social engineering-led attacks, so it is very difficult to prevent with just tools. Awareness is required. Yeah, you need to have all-round kind of response to security. It cannot just be one thing.
Just to add here, say particularly around phishing, say DMAR kind of solutions are available, and there are solutions available to sort of help you out, creating, as Chetan was saying, to help you out enabling that awareness part. So phishing simulation kind of solutions are available, right, which can help your employees understand more about it, and you can also assess where they stand in terms of their understanding. So those solutions are available in the ecosystem.
Yeah, Atul, I can add to that, to what Chetan and you just said. So one of the key things that we are seeing when we do forensic investigations is, as I mentioned, there are three parts to it. One is ingress, second is lateral movement, and third is egress. So one of the key things is we can prevent by having EDR solutions, phishing, awareness sessions and stuff like that. That is on the preventive side. But what we have seen effective is on the detection, is if you are able to detect the lateral movement. That's why detection and response, that's why the monitoring piece all comes so significant. And then if that's what we have seen is one of the ways to address that piece of it, which is there is going to be this a small percentage of people who are still going to click the link, are still going to do that behavior, which is despite the best awareness, best EDR solutions that you've got. So how do you make sure that you detect it in time and then before the exfiltration of data happens? So that has to get complemented with an effective detection and response solution.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for your inputs, Darshan. So I think this would have answered that thing. Again, as I said, and as Darshan said, and Chetan was saying, there's no silver bullet. You have to be very comprehensive in that sense. And there are solutions available. You need to just see what is applicable on you, and you need to adopt those things. You can keep adopting. And from that changing paradigm, which is what we are seeing in terms of digitization, right? The security by design and privacy by design, while you are just moving on that technology and moving on that journey of digitization, try to incorporate those things from the security and privacy point of view, so that later on you won't feel that challenge. So at the initial stage itself, it should be by design, you should think about it. It shouldn't be post-implementation, post-thought kind of thing. It should be while you are moving on that digital tools, technologies, you should start looking at the security aspect from that point itself. I think no more questions here.
There's one more question, which says, how do we protect small businesses against cybersecurity risks? That was the summary of the entire conversation that we had so far. Just I want to add that if you can't measure, you can't improve. So first is to know what your risks are. Do an assessment to know what your risks are, and then you will understand of how to mitigate them. You can have a plan of action. Again, risks can be handled in multiple ways. Either you can live with the risk, or you can mitigate the risk, or remediate the risks, and so on. Or you can even transfer the risk. Insurance is one of the options, but it's not the first option. Having input your positively, you can start looking at insurance and so on. So first, do measure, do understand where do you stand, and then start, how you can improve on that.
Sure. So, and Aditya has shared his email ID here. So I think Saurav has done that. So you can reach out to us in case you have any query later on in this regard, while you are looking at that assessment framework. If you want to discuss anything, any specific thing you have in mind where you want clarity, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to answer that. The overall intent is that, as I said, the first line, the overall SMBs in India, and especially the ITITS SMBs, are very strategic part of the overall global supply chain. And we have to make sure that our credibility is intact, and we are taking all the measures to make ourselves strengthen from the cybersecurity and data protection point of view. So it has to be a very holistic approach. And if you do that, probably we'll be in good shape and we'll grow as we are going so fast. So I think we have covered everything. So thanks Dharshan and thanks Chetan for joining us for this. And thanks a lot Saurabh for having us here actually.
So Atul, it's our pleasure, and to have you all, particularly Darshan, Chetan, Aditya, everyone. And on behalf of SME Council, I would like to, convey our gratitude to hold this masterclass session on cyber security. I'm pretty sure that the attendees who have been patient enough to stay along with us for more than 90 minutes now, though it was intended for 75 minutes. They would find this session pretty interesting and insightful, and though informative. And we would like to build upon these initiatives and do some more masterclass on cybersecurity going forward. And to all attendees, thank you very much for your time and be a patient listener. We would like to help you out on this area. Please feel free to write to Aditya and me or Atul, anyone who is there, and we'll be happy to help you out. And thank you again, and have a nice evening and have a lovely weekend. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saurabh.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chetan. Yeah. Have a good one. Thank you, all the participants.